those of you who don't remember who I am, I'm Pastor Colleen, and we're glad you're here today. And it's just good to be with you. We are in our second week of Parenthood. That's going to be the theme for the next few weeks. But I want that to scare you away because it's not just about parents. It's about all relationships, especially today. And so we're going to look at 3 principles that never change in regard to relationships. 3 things that are important, that are principles that it goes with every single relationship that we have. And I think about it, especially in regards to parenting, that those relationships change over time. And often the priorities and the principles that we think are so important and when we're new parents change as we get older, or change as we become grandparents or great-grandparents. It's funny how that stuff works. I was thinking of our great-grandkids when they were born, that the new mom and dad were at our house, and we had to wipe our hands on wipes before we could pick up our granddaughter, our great-granddaughter. And we just thought, okay, I wash my hands. I mean, I've had kids before. And she was, that was they were very particular about all those little tiny things, about how you held them, how you hung on to them. And now that little bugger is in wrestling. So I think they're okay now. She is grown. She's about 8. And by the time the second one came, they weren't quite as fussy about all the little dirty germs that could get into that little one's life. And I thought of with our family, one of the key rules when we got married and combined those first 4 boys was you had to clean your plate. Because Gary and I had to clean our plates growing up, right? So we were going to force it on our little ones, our big ones. They weren't that little, the ones that we had at that time. Oh, that didn't go well some weeks. I remember, just vegetable soup it took all day. Pancakes took all day for one. It just was not a good thing. By the time we got to the last 4, I came to believe and realize that, this is not something I need to die on. There's too many meals and I'm going to lose eventually. And it was a hard thing for us to learn, but to learn to just put that plate away, and if they got really hungry, there was still in their fridge. They could eat it later. But they didn't have to finish that one plate of food before they could leave the table. And I know some of the older ones looked at us and said, hey, that ain't what, they have to pay their dues as well. But learning to do that as, things change. So those weren't the principles we're talking about today. Things change in our philosophy. And when, and then when you become a grandparent or great-grandparent, you don't even worry about it because they're not yours. You just send them home. And you can feed them whatever. So we're going to look at Jesus, and he's going to show us, because remember, this is our truth, and we're always going to take it from God's word. And today we're going to look at 3 unchanging truths, unchanging principles that Jesus shows us in Mark chapter 10, verses 13 to 16. It's going to be a picture of Jesus with some children. It's going to be a story that many of you are familiar with. But we can glean so much just from these few verses this morning. So Mark 10, verses 13 to 16. One day, some parents brought their children to Jesus so he could touch and bless them. But the disciples scolded the parents for bothering him. When Jesus saw what was happening, he was angry with his disciples. He said to them, "Let the children come to me and don't stop them, for the kingdom of God belongs to those who are like these children. I tell you the truth, anyone who doesn't receive the kingdom of God like a child will never enter it." Then he took the children in his arms and placed his hands on their heads, and he blessed them. So we're looking at this, and we're seeing that there's people, well, I imagine parents or grandparents, bringing their kids to see Jesus. And what did they want Jesus to do to the children? Bless them. And when we think of that, we're thinking, what? Some of us have different pictures in our minds. We've seen the pictures in Sunday school or on the wall with Jesus and the children. But then if we look at our culture and look at some of the things when we talk about putting hands on somebody and blessing them, sometimes our ideas get a little screwed up because we've seen the charlatans and the false prophets and the preachers that are out there saying, I'll touch him and heal him. And not that healing is true, and it does happen, and I don't want to take away from the real thing, but often there have been those that have used that as a way to just get big congregations or to get lots of money, and they truly aren't. It's just a show. So if that's what you're thinking, I don't think that's what these parents, I know that isn't what these parents were wanting, and that isn't how Jesus worked. But he's bringing the kids. To me, that picture is probably the one that you're thinking of, some of you, is that when the kids came to Jesus, he sat down on that rock and he let them sit on his lap. He gave a hug around them. He touched them. He played with them. I can just see him throwing a ball around, having some fun, because he wanted to have fun with the kids. That's Jesus with children. That's a relationship. And that's what this picture is, how Jesus is blessing the children. Children aren't going to get blessed if all you're going to do is tap them on the head. They're not going to really think all that. In fact, they get a little annoyed if you do that a lot, or squeeze their little cheeks or whatever it is, or rub their head. One of my nephews has some great nephews has some weird hair. I shouldn't say weird, different hair. And everybody loves to just rub his head like it's a genie in a bottle. And now he's getting to the place where he hates it, and it's starting to get him a little angry. And he's not very old, so hopefully he gets through this. But there's 3 changing things that we can find out about relationships. Now remember, it's not just about parents and kids. This is about your relationships with anybody in your family and in your community, in your close relationships. First one, the loving touch. Touch is so very important. Loving and appropriate touch that communicates a rich sense of unconditional love and acceptance. Verse 13 said, the people brought the children to Jesus so he could touch and bless them. They wanted Jesus to reach out and touch them. There's power in loving, appropriate touch. There is power. Sometimes we get freaked out because the culture has made touch such an inappropriate thing. So we have to be careful, and we have to do it appropriately, but we have to do it in love. But Jesus knew how to do that. And you think about all the other scriptures that talk about Jesus and his touch. People would bring a lot of people to Jesus to get healed, and he would touch them and heal them. And you see that, and he said, be healed in the name of the Father, in the name of me, in the name of the Holy Ghost. Or, that's what he was doing. He was going around healing people, or they were bringing people to him. One of the ways we can know that Jesus' touch for these children wasn't that showy kind. He wasn't doing it to get the parents' approval. He was doing it because he loved kids. Was the word in Greek that was being used. It was haptomahil, and it means very literally to attach oneself. So that's what Jesus' touch in that context at this time means, to attach himself to the children. So that's where I'm thinking he's sitting there, sitting on his lap and putting his arms around him, and he's just loving on him. And that's what he's calling us to do as well. But as they come up to him, they receive that, and it's very, very relational. So why is that so important? Well, Dr. Tiffany Field of the University of Miami School of Medicine did some touch research, and she traveled to different airports. And in the old days, before cell phones, people would actually touch each other when they were sitting and waiting for an airplane. They would sit up next to each other. They would lean their heads on their shoulders, and they would, nap on and off. They would visit with each other if that was part of the family, or even across the aisle to other people in the airport. And there would be touch going on. There would be people having relationships going on. And she said, now all you see in an airport often is people texting each other. Sometimes people that are talking to each other right next to each other are texting each other. I saw that on a television show the other night. These 2 teenagers were texting each other, and they were on the same couch. And I thought, okay, you could say all that out loud. But maybe because mom was in the next room, I don't know. They didn't think it was a good idea. But still, they were missing that touch, that time together. They were so physically apart from each other. And in the 1990s, there was a Science of Touch came, and they went to Romania to these orphanages to see, if there was a difference between how children were brought up, because they weren't thriving. Yet they were being fed. They had a place to sleep that was warm. They had 3 people to 3 staff members to each floor, and there was about 20 children. So that touch would have been a difficult thing. And that's what they were finding, because their resources for people were so thin that even though the children all received the same food, the same physical care, and it was good care, they were still showing signs of they were being deprived. They were autistic-like, and they were growth deprived. It said they were half the weight and height that they should be. It was that dramatic of a difference because they received no touch, even though they had the food and everything they needed physically. They needed that touch of another human being. Dr. Field did some studies on playgrounds and compared it to McDonald's. So she did the playground thing with preschoolers, and she went and did this study, and she looked at the playgrounds, and in Paris and Miami, Florida, and her studies found for that the preschoolers, the kids in Miami that didn't have any touch, that didn't really go around and play tag and do different things together, that were kind of more separate, because in Paris, they're a touchy bunch. They hug and they hang out and they play together and they touch each other. But in Miami, they didn't see that. But what they did see in Miami was a lot of fighting, was a lot of anger, was a lot more of that antisocial behavior than in Paris, where they seemed to get along a lot better. And then she looked at kids in McDonald's, some older ones, and she saw the same thing, that teenagers in McDonald's in Paris actually talked to each other. They sat next to each other. They hung out together. They weren't afraid to pat each other on the back or give themselves a hug once in a while, give each other a hug once in a while. But the ones in Miami and the teenagers in McDonald's were basically on their phones. No touch. There was more antisocial stuff going on, and they were more angry, and they were more aggressive, both verbally and physically. So Matthew 6:56, Jesus said, it says about Jesus, whenever he came into a village, town, or countryside, they placed the sick in the marketplaces, and they begged him to touch them, even the edge of the clothes, and they were healed. So he touched them, and what happened? When Jesus touched them, what happened? There we go. I heard a couple more this time. Yes, when Jesus touched someone, they were healed. Isn't that something? A word study on that word touched in the NIV reveals that in the Gospels, that word touch is used 20 times with regard to Jesus Christ. Touch and heal, those two together. When Jesus touched people, he healed them. And he wasn't afraid of them. He touched lepers. He touched women. He touched women that were bleeding. He touched all the different people in society that nobody would touch, and brought them worth and value because of his touch. So as people, we need to get better at just patting somebody on the back, giving them a side hug. I mean, there are hugs that are acceptable. There is touching that's acceptable. And we need to learn how to do that because, unfortunately, because we miss all that, we're alienating our culture. And dads, and you have a special, those of you with girls, young girls especially, you have a big, big job. Because often when they hit adolescence, girls start changing. Their bodies start changing, and it gets a little awkward. And we try to think, how are we going to do this? And I know at our house, because part of the reason was because of our foster children, we didn't want to have an allegation. And so Gary tended to distance himself from the females in our household because he didn't want anything to happen. But teenage girls need your touch. They need to know that what a godly man, they need to know what appropriate touch is. They need to know that so when there's a gentleman in their lives, they know what's appropriate and what isn't. Because they need to know that they're still beautiful young ladies and that you love them and that you're there for them. And if they don't have that touch, they start feeling alienated. And they feel like they need to get it from someplace else. And And I know my dad was probably brought up that way. And so there wasn't a lot of touch in my house from any, and so I know that was probably, I don't want to blame him for anything because he was a great dad. I love going out and playing softball with him and those kind of things. And when he told me, that I did a good job or that the food was good that I had cooked, that raised my, my happiness real level really good. But there wasn't any, I don't think he started hugging till he was a grandpa. And he just didn't know how to do that. And that's probably a big reason I looked for it elsewhere. And to find somebody that would do that. And that's what we have to be careful. Young women need to have that kind of a touch so they can have that appropriate thing. And then they found in these studies, too, that young women, girls, did tend to get more positive touch than boys. But boys still need that kind of touch. They need those kind of things as well. We can't just ignore them. But maybe their touch doesn't have to be a hug or, a pat on the back or, those kind of things. It can be a high five, good. Or it can be wrestling on the floor. It can be all those things, dads and moms, dads especially. Those are the kind of touches that young men need. They need to know that they're still a part of the family and that they're getting that kind of, they can have a secret handshake. We need to be engaged with them as well. When I get up early in the morning and the kids are over, or when the kids were little or when the grandkids are there, I like to get up, well, I always like to get up early. But what I really cherish is those times where one of those come into my office and they sit in the chair and just sit there and talk to me. I mean, I know I'm getting interrupted, but I like that time together in the morning. Noah used to be a great one at that. He was always up early when he was a little kid. And he'd be sitting there, 6 o'clock in the morning, and here he is sitting in that chair just visiting with me. And I love that. And then when other ones have spent the night, they're doing it too. And to me, that's time that we spend together. And I enjoy that. And touch is so very important. Touch just of being in a relationship and having time as well. And we're going to be talking about a few more of those things. And the other thing I just want to mention too, women in relationships need touch as well. We need a hug. We need a pat on the back. We need to know that we're valued. But those of you that are married and those of you that are in significant relationships, just a couple of words. That grabbing and that patting on the bottom and that kind of stuff, you know what? That ain't romantic. And I think every woman here can say that. None of us like that kind of grabbing. And you just, if you want to, we need non-sexual touch. We need a hug. Hugs are good. We need to know that we're valued outside of the bedroom. So keep that in mind as well, gentlemen, that when you're in relationships, to give the right kind of touch to that significant person in your life as well. Because if you're saying, hey, babe, and grab something or slap your wife, it's not romantic. When Dr. Field was asked about the importance of hugging, she said it's kind of like they inject a cold germ into people who were in the study, and those people that had more hugs, what do you think happened? They didn't get sick. Their immunity levels were higher. We need that to stay well. So if you want to stay healthy, keep hugging each other, and that helps a lot. And it helps and it says even if you expect, like if you're a student or somebody that have something really stressful that you're meeting, hugs ahead of time reduce the stress level. So if you got some big day coming up, go find somebody to hug a bunch of times so that it reduces your stress level. And kids that works with finals as well, knowing that those things help to bring that up for you. So if you need an excuse, take advantage of the fact that a hug will help you before a stressful situation. And they're great afterwards too. From the time we're in the womb through our elderly years, touch plays a primary role in our development and physical and mental well-being. The elderly need touches and hugs as well. They need to know that you're there, that you love them, that you care about them. That brings us to the second unchanging principle, time, abundant time. Lots and lots of time and then more time. Someone once said, how do children spell love? It's Time. the time that we can spend with them. Look at what Jesus does in verse 13. It says he got mad at the disciples for trying to stop the kids from coming up to him. He says, let them come. I have time for them now. And he said it was important. And he's never too busy. He took that time when he was indignant, it says in the NIV. And that means he was angry. He says, bring them on. Like, bring the kids on. Let them come. How many of you are NASCAR fans? Anybody want to claim that? Oh, there's a couple of you. Okay. I used to listen to a comedian, and she would talk about NASCAR. And she said, I don't know what guys do about it, because to me, she goes, it's probably because men don't like to ask for directions. They like to go around and around and around and around. And then for her, she said, it's kind of like 100 little tiny hot flashes as they go around, because she would go with her husband to NASCAR. But some people use time with their families in that way as well. And it's more like a pit stop.
No, you don't.
Doc, I'm flat!
Can you get back to the pits?
Yeah, I think so.
Hey, got a yellow. Bring it in. Don't tear yourself up, kid.
We gotta get him back up there fast, or we're gonna be a lap down and we'll never win this race!
Rito, it's time.
Hey, Tiny, you gonna clean his windshield? I don't believe it!
That was the fastest pit stop I've ever seen.
It was a great stop, but he's still got to beat that pace car out.
It's gonna be close.
Yay! Back in the race! Pit stop.
There's 7 people down there, and they go zoom, 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 and they get it all done, and it's just a few seconds, and everything's back to where it's supposed to be. Some of us do pit stop parenting, or relationships even. You'll say, how was your day today? Good, okay, and then you move on. Did you get your homework done? Did you do this? You go through this list of things as a parent, as a grandparent, as a friend. Or you'll send them a quick text, I'm thinking of you today, but that's it. And you'll just keep doing these things. And then, it's like a drive-by. You wave at him, there he goes, there's Dad, I'm on my way there, goodbye, I see you later. And you keep doing these short, fast things going on. But according to an article, dads actually spend 37 seconds a day with their children. And moms don't do a lot better. 37 seconds of meaningful conversation. That's not a lot. In fact, that's hardly anything. And that's where we're, and we do that in relationships, not just with our kids. I find I do it with my friends, sadly, sometimes too, because I'm busy. And I forget that I should call them. Just had a lady call me before church this morning, and I thought I'm going to do more of that. This message was quite it talked to me a lot too, just convicting, to spend more time. People trump everything else. And to spend that time. And it gets hard sometimes because you can't get it all done. And I get that. Parents work. Both parents work. So where do you find the time to get this all done? And then there's single parents. I can't even imagine. They have to do both jobs and still try to find time to do it with all the kids. And so if you're not careful, you're going to miss out on your kids. You're going to miss out because you're not spending any time with them, really, any emotional support that they have. So, if you're not careful, that's what's going to happen. My excuse, like I said, was when I was younger, was I had 4 kids. I can't be everywhere. I can't, and I was working at home, and I thought, oh my God, if you're a good person and you really care in your heart, you say, well, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make time someday or tomorrow. But tomorrow never comes. I'm going to get there. I need to work a little harder. I'll spend the time with the kids around the holidays when my day's off. What is your life, James said. You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Life is short. Don't waste your time on stuff that doesn't last. People last. One of the reasons we put an addition on our house when we still had 3 kids at home was because we wanted to enjoy it while the kids were at home. We wanted to be able to have more room to spend and have time with our family. You know, a lot of people wait till they're retired and make this big fancy house to live in all by themselves. And I thought, I still haven't figured, and you just, to us it was more important to be able to use it even though we had to really struggle to pay the bills. But it was worth having that extra room. Then we got some more kids but to fill it up. But it was a way that we're able to enjoy it a lot longer that way. You know, somebody once asked Billy Graham, he says, if you could change anything about your life, what would you do? And a lot of us would think, oh, he would have wished he could have went and saved more people and shared the gospel with more people and wrote more books and maybe built another center. His answer wasn't any of those things. He said, I would have spent more time with my kids. Abundant time. One working woman, and she was an active pastor's wife. She had 6 kids, and she worked besides doing all those. And they said, how can you keep your kids a priority? What do you do? One was she kept God first place. She said, I can't do this alone. I have to keep God first place. My time with him is first. And what he calls me to do. She said, second was keep life simple. Don't overfill my schedule. Don't overfill the kids' schedule. Keep life simple. Don't worry about the house. It'll still be there and it'll still be dirty tomorrow. You know, what is most important? Spend the time with the kids. And her last one was just slow down. Enjoy them. Find time with them. Don't worry about all the extra stuff. Focus on your kids. All right, the third unchanging principle is encouraging talk. Look at what Jesus said to the children. He took the children in his arms and he placed his hands on them and he blessed them. Wonder what he said. I doubt if he said, bless you. You know, he said, hey, boy, you're doing so good. You're so, you know, I don't know what he said either. But what do you say when you're trying to encourage little ones? You know, sadly, a lot of times what we find ourselves saying to people or to children a lot of times is, cut that out. Hey, stop. No, don't do that. Don't do that. I wish you were more like your sister. I wish you were more like your brother. I wish you would wish you would clean your room. I wish you would get the chores done faster. I wish you would do them right this time. You know, there's a lot more negative talk that comes out of our mouth than positive stuff. I don't think Jesus said, hey, get over. You know, you get 2 minutes, you get 1 minute. I mean, I'm not going to talk to you right now. I've only got so much time. He blessed them. He encouraged them. One of the most important things we can do for our children or anyone in a relationship is to encourage them, to talk to them, to be a part of their lives. It's abundant. It's encouraging talk, to lift them up, to say things that are positive instead of negative. As a parent, I felt I was characterized a lot more often by saying negative things than positive things. And I wish I could go back and change those things, because I wanted things done right. If you're going to do it, you need to do it right. And I would make sure they did it sometimes that way. And I wish I would have not worried about it so much. And I didn't want to be characterized by that. I wish I had said, well done, more often. I'm so proud of you. You knocked it out of the park today. You did great. You're the most awesome of all time. I wish I would have said more of those things instead of correcting them. And now, as a parent of adults, my desire is to encourage them and applaud them as often and as loudly as possible, because they still need it. Our friends need it. Our parents need it. They need to know that they're doing, that they're valuable in your sight. You know, it isn't just those with little children. It's for all of us to encourage one another with words. Here's something I thought was pretty profound. In all of Scripture, there's only one place that the audible voice of God is recorded speaking to Jesus Christ. Now, I'm sure they had a lot more than that conversation-wise, but there was one recorded, and it was at his baptism. And a voice from heaven said, this is my dearly loved son who brings me great joy. Now, he's not a little guy. He's 30 years old. He was affirming his son and the ministry that he was about to begin. God spoke encouraging words. Jesus had been baptized, and he got to hear this. He heard his father say, I am proud of you. Heaven is breaking out. We're having a party to see what's happening in your life. I love you so much. We all need to hear that. We need to hear it. The person sitting next to us needs to hear it. Our parents, our kids, our boyfriend, our girlfriend, the people that live down the street, they all need to hear that they're valued and that they're loved. There's something about it when I read that. When I hear God say to his son, you are my dearly loved son. It just fills my heart. And I want to hear that too one day when I stand in front of God. I want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. I want to hear him say that about me. I wish I would have heard more of that when I was growing up. Often parents get so busy with everything else, they forget to say those things. And sometimes we do a lot of things to try to earn that affirmation in our lives. And my dad, he wasn't, like I said, he wasn't a hugger, but he did say a few words occasionally. And one was playing ball. It's probably one of the reasons I still love softball, because he would encourage me, and he taught us, and he was a part of our lives, and wasn't always, well done, you did a great job. And maybe he did it more for the boys instead of the girls, sadly, but he still did it. And then it was, my grandmother was really good about it. But when I cleaned the house good, or when I made a good meal, he would always tell me thank you. And that really filled my cup. And we need to do that with each other and those people in our lives. Parents, people, each one of us, you've got one chance. Time, talk, and touch. For those of you that would say, yeah, whatever, I only have so much time, I don't have time to do that. Let me just tell you this. The next time you have a baby, or if you have a nephew or a niece, or somebody in your life that's got a little one, pick them up and hold them in your arms. Shut your eyes. Just blink. Get that mental picture. You're thinking of that little child. He's in your arms. He's just a tiny one. Connor, they went to a birthday party yesterday for a 1-year-old cousin, right? In a year. Has she grown? She a different size? Yep. And she's walking around and running all over the place. Because if you blink your eyes, the next time you open up, they're growing. They've changed. Then you blink your eyes again. Then they're in school. Then you blink your eyes again. Where are they going to be next? They're going to be teenagers. Blink your eyes again. You may be walking them down the aisle or saying goodbye as they go to school. Because when you open your eyes, that child will no longer be riding off in that bicycle. He might not even be driving off in that car. He'll be on his own. She'll be on her own. And if you don't believe me, and you think I'm being overly dramatic, blink again.
A child arrived just the other day.
The best dad a kid ever
Came
had.
to the world in the usual way, but there were planes to catch and bills to pay.
Honey, I gotta go.
He learned to walk
can't you
while
just
I was
cancel your
away,
meeting?
and he was talking
They're depending on
forward.
me.
And as he grew, he'd say, "I'm gonna be like you, Dad. You know I'm gonna be like you." And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon, little boy blue and the man in the moon. When you're coming home, Dad, I don't know when, but we'll get together then. You know we'll have a good time then. My Son turned 10 just the other day. He said, thanks for the ball, Dad, come on, let's play. Can you teach me to throw? I said, not today, I got a lot to do. He said, that's okay, and he walked away, but his smile never dimmed and said, I'm gonna be like him, yeah, you know I'm gonna be like him. And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon, little boy blue and the man in the moon. When you're coming home, Dad, I don't know when, but we'll get together then. You know we'll have a good time then. Well, he came from college just the other day, so much like a man I just had to say, son, I'm proud of you, can you sit for a while? He shook his head and he said with a smile, what I'd really like, Dad, is to borrow the car keys. See you later, can I have them please? And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon, little boy blue and the man in the moon. When you're coming home, son, I don't know when, but we'll get together then. You know we'll have a good time then. I've long since retired, my son's moved away. I called him up just the other day. I said, I'd like to see you if you don't mind. He said, I'd love to, Dad, if I could find the time. You see, my new job's a hassle and the kids have the flu, but it's sure nice talking to you, Dad. It's been sure nice talking to you. And as I hung up the phone, it occurred to me, he'd grown up just like me. My boy was just like me. And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon, little boy blue and the man in the moon. When you're coming home, son, I don't know when, but we'll get together then. Yeah, we're gonna have a good time then.
So take a minute and reflect, if you would, on what we've talked about today from a standpoint of relationships. If you've got kids, apply this to your life according to how you're parenting. If you don't have children, I want you to look at the other relationships around you. Maybe your mom and dad, maybe your brothers and sisters, maybe with people that you work with, and ask yourself, am I building them rather than tearing them down? Am I loving them with appropriate touch? Am I spending adequate time with them? No excuses. To those of you who would say, you know what? God is showing me. I could be a light in my children's relationship. It could be your parent that you're realizing, hey, I need to spend more time with them. I need them to know how much I love them and appreciate them. If you would say, man, the Spirit of God is stirring me something in me, and I see an area of my life that needs to change, that needs to be different, I would encourage you to take that step, to be obedient. If that's you today, just pray that you will follow through on what God is showing you. Let's pray. God, I ask that you minister to every single one of us. I pray that we would never be so complacent not to look for ways to better express our love. God, stir within us the desire to spend time with those we love, to lift them, to encourage them, to hold one another, to share your love and your goodness in ways that bring us close to one another and ultimately close to you. God, we commit to do what you put on our hearts today. God, change our relationships as you first changed our hearts. Pray this in the powerful name and the powerful touch of Jesus Christ. Amen.